Howdy peeps, I'll be doing well. It's been a little while since I've done a video. I've actually done a couple, but they didn't cut the mustard, as it were, so in my opinion not really worth uploading. Far too scattery here, there and everywhere. So I suppose this video I'm going to be talking mostly about the collateral psychological damage that happens to guys, since this is mostly a male channel, and well, at least that's the idea of it anyway. I think there's far more help available for women out there than there is for guys when it comes down to this kind of a thing. And sure, yeah, I'm going to be covering stuff that I've been speaking about over the last 6 years, but I think they're relevant because I think there's some people, I think really people that only really get it are those that have been in these situations. They can actually appreciate, the thought and emotion that goes into these relationships. I said that on purpose because that's what they are. Now, sure, I've spoken quite a bit about red flags within, even when you first converse with women, meet and greet and all that sort of thing, and the sort of long chats that you have during a sort of dating phase, if this is applicable to you guys. This is also, I suppose, a bit of a backtrack to get others to see where they may have potentially gone wrong. Again, it's not that it's down, it's not that, if it applies to you, it's not that you have gone wrong, it's just perhaps you were inexperienced or naive in the ways of the darker side of this thing that we call humanity. And that is obviously when people put up a front, they're pretending to be someone that they're not giving you the full truth on certain situations or aspects, and well, a lot of the time you want to go in and you expect honesty from another person, so you tend not to question it so much, at least not on a direct scale. You might not necessarily find yourself asking, well, what about this, because it's a bit of a double-edged sword, especially if you're meeting someone new, or if at the time there was someone new and you really like them, so of course the last thing you want to do is upset them or get on their nerves or something like that. But realistically speaking, I think you kind of have to, you do have to kind of tread on some toes. I'm not saying you need to be arrogant or brutal about it, I'm just saying you need to do it. It'll get you out of that relationship in no time. It might be for the best. So yeah, one of the sort of things that I've noticed a lot of in terms of how women describe themselves, especially, dating sites, dating apps, that kind of a thing, it's very easy for anyone to literally lie about who they actually are and just put on a facade of words that just dresses them up and blows a bit of sunshine out their bum or whatever. And then of course it's only a matter of once you sort of played that, I suppose, dating game and you've gotten to know them, then you sort of think to yourself, well, maybe they are relationship material or whatever. Again, ultimately things like that it's always going to be the women that choose that. They will make that final decision, as we know. Is what it is. But realistically, when it comes down to people that do put on a facade and they're pretending to be someone that they're not, obviously, if you've got sort of regular contact with them, you're in a lot of contact with them, and that you can usually pick it out within 90 days if you know what to look for, and if you're willing to be brutal with yourself. It's like, it doesn't matter how attractive they are, or that they've said all the right words. If the actions and the words aren't congruent, you need to be either questioning that or getting out of Dodge. I'd say you're probably better off getting out of Dodge, because it's just going to be a bit of a shit show in the long run, and you don't want that anyway. So, but that's obviously just the sort of introductory phase of a potential toxic relationship. Now, one of the sort of things, like I say, with women describing themselves, you'll hear a lot of words like, oh, that, you know, they are really empathetic, or even going as far as saying, I'm an empath, so I understand others' feelings and others' points of view, which could well be true to a degree, but the kind of issue that I kind of tend to have with that is, I think a lot of the time it's just put on. It's just a show, another facade. In some cases it might be genuine, and I think this is one of the sort of aspects of being involved in a toxic relationship, what it can do to the individual, in this case the guy. I would argue that there are a lot more empathetic guys out there, and I mean genuine guys, and it's again, that in itself is a double-edged blade, you know, because guys, we've always been, I suppose, hardwired to try and do what is best for the ones that we love, you know, whether it's the girlfriend or the mother of your child or your missus, your wife, whatever. So a lot of the time you're always going to be wanting to put them first, pretty much, you know. Which isn't, I wouldn't say is a bad thing on normal standards. The problem begins where you've got someone that's gone into a relationship and they don't have the best intentions for the relationship. They have the best intentions for themselves, and so they can turn out to be somewhat malevolent and, well, narcissistic when it comes to that. And then, like I say, as you sort of progress on within the relationship, you know, I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but I've certainly found myself treading on eggshells, you know. You know, sometimes their, air quotes, mood might swiftly change from one thing to another, and I get it. Sometimes in life things happen, and, you know, we may get annoyed, so we might be happy 1 minute, and then you get a letter through the post or something, and it's an unexpected bill, so you might have the amp, or the bank's taken out too much money to pay for something that it shouldn't have, and you kind of get the ump. And I'm not justifying that for having to go at the other person if you're in a relationship with them. Obviously it's down to the bank, but that's kind of one thing. It's when they try to blame the first person in sight, and obviously if you're in a relationship, sometimes that's going to be the other person. You know, and that's not a good situation to be in either. And when it starts to happen more regularly, in terms of, I suppose, narcissistic relationships, you could argue it's like, well, you know, maybe you've already had the idolisation phase, you know, you've had the love bombing and all of that, and it progresses on to the devaluation, usually closely followed by the discard, when they just throw you away like a piece of trash. They just, you know. Now, again, that is even subject to every individual. Some do it to literally create a form of trauma bond, so that they won't leave, so that you won't leave them. It becomes like a vicious cycle. Again, sort of like the calm before the storm, the actual storm being the argument, and then the sort of great make-up later on, and everything's fine and dandy, until the next one erupts. And yeah, it's not necessarily a good situation to be in, because at that point you are in a relationship where you are literally treading on eggshells all the time, and you don't know where you're at, so your back is constantly up, and that is not a good situation to be in a relationship either, because, you know, it's not, you shouldn't have to be on the defensive all the time. You know, what is this person going to have a go at me for next, or, you know, what is going to be the next issue? And I would argue that a lot of guys have stayed in relationships where that has been the case for a lot longer than what they should have, purely because maybe a combination of the whole trauma bond cycle, you know, rinse and repeat, and they have like an unjustified, what I would call an unjustified love for the other person. It's I mean, I think with some people it might be even worse, especially when you start to learn the symptoms of what could be potentially wrong with someone. And a lot of women will say that, you know, they've got depression or something like that, and realistically they haven't. That's just an excuse for shitty behaviour. And even when, I mean, I've sort of said in the past, it's like there is no real excuse for people to be in the literal sense of narcissistic. There's no real excuse for that, not in the way they treat others. But either way, guys do stay in relationships a lot longer than what they should do. And this in itself can cause a lot of collateral damage. I mean, as if that sort of a relationship isn't bad enough in the first place. Just purely based on constantly walking on eggshells, not knowing what's going to be your fault next, what is the next agenda that's going to be taken out on you. And it's, you know, something that someone once said to me, it's like, you're in a relationship and you're supposed to be each other's emotional punching bag. And this is something that I'm not sure if I agree with or not. I don't think I do on principle. You know, it's like, it just doesn't sit that well with me. You know, you're not in a relationship to psychologically beat up the other person when you're going through a hard time yourself. But maybe it's because, man, I'm not making excuses for them. I'm just trying to look at maybe a potential cause. I mean, it's just not on to blame the other person. You know, if they're there for you, if they're in a relationship with you, then the last thing that the other person should be doing, but then we're talking about narcissistic entitlement with this one, you know, whereas you lose your person status with these individuals and you become property. And they will literally treat you as such. And of course, again, this also has collateral damage on the individual. And, you know, I think a lot of the time you come away from these situations and you know, if you had trust issues in the first place, rightly so, I think if anyone doesn't have trust issues, they've probably got something else wrong with them. Too naive, perhaps. But it is kind of difficult, and of course nowadays we're seeing these a lot of women saying, oh yeah, they can't find a guy that they can trust. It's like, really? Well, I know plenty of guys that can't trust, and like it's like you've got both groups, both sexes or both genders, whatever you want to call it, blaming the other for the situations that they've been in, which is a tad unfair on both behalves. But, you know, realistically speaking, once you go through these scenarios, it's not easy to sort of just pretend it didn't happen. There's not like if you excuse the pun, there's not like a pill you can take that can make all the bad memories of what you went through go away, and, you know, all the sort of arguments that may have erupted out of nothing unnecessarily. You know, there's no real quick fix for that. It's just time more than anything, but even so, it doesn't make it any easier. Anyway, thoughts, comments and opinions, feel free to jot them down as always. Thank you very much for tuning in, it's much appreciated. Like, subscribe, share, do what you will. Till the next one, hope you've been enjoying the weather. Thunderstorms are coming, stay cool, stay free, peace out.